Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up inside of One Piece with the ultimate bounty hunter system. How is he gonna change One Piece?
Pirate, I the bounty hunter, will eat the marines out of house and home. Chapter 1, Super Bounty Order. 1517 of the Sea Calendar, North Sea, Svalo Island. Amidst the sounds of cannon fire and shouts, this island, shaped like a seagull, welcomes the daily activity on the high seas, a pirate invasion. Men charge. Loot all the treasure and wine. Amidst the roar of cannons, the pirates grinned as they stormed into the port. They killed anyone they saw and hacked anyone they encountered, and the stench of blood immediately filled the streets and alleys. A two-story wooden house stood on a secluded street, which, by sheer coincidence, was hit by a cannonball used by pirates as a show of force and collapsed on the spot. Cough, cough. Ouch. That hurts. That hurts. A girl who looked to be 13 or 14 years old, wearing a shirt and trousers, crawled out of the rubble, clutching her head which had been smashed by a beam. She stared blankly at everything before her, and before she could even process what was happening, a sudden flood of memories rushed into her brain. Day. The girl, who had just gotten up, suddenly felt dizzy and her face made intimate contact with the floor again with a thud. A few minutes later, Yelena, who had regained her senses, covered her head and sat on the floor with a pained expression. Oh, what terrible things have I done? In her past life, she took advantage of the National Day holiday to visit a famous scenic spot. However, due to the large number of tourists, she was pushed off the boardwalk while descending the mountain. In this life, she's even more unlucky. When she was 8 years old, the Don Quixote family landed on Svalbard, stealing countless treasures and taking dozens of lives, including her father. A complete family was easily destroyed. Last year, my seriously ill mother passed away in bed. She lost all her loved ones. Today, while she was sitting at home, a shell came down from the sky. She was seriously injured by the explosion and was fortunate enough to awaken her memories of her past life, but her house was completely destroyed. Yelena's body trembled, and tears streamed down her face. Arriving in the dangerous world of pirates, surviving peacefully is difficult. Avenging one's family is even harder. That's the Don Quixote family, it's Doflamingo. In her past life, she called him Zyraming, Mingdi, or even Mingsun. What about in the world of One Piece? That's one of the 7 warlords of the sea. He is a ruthless person who has mastered all 3 types of haki and developed his devil fruit ability to the point of awakening. She used her head to hit him. Yelena's low spirits didn't affect her for long. She quickly remembered her current situation. Pirates were attacking the town, and she needed to find a place to hide first. We can deal with the future later. The most important thing right now is to get through this crisis. Yelena got up and walked to a corner of the room, where she dug out a wooden box from the rubble. This is her treasured possession, containing several large denomination berry bills and a bounty poster that has been slashed countless times. The human figures on the surface can still be vaguely discerned through the mottled marks. The blonde-haired man, with his chest exposed, wearing red-rimmed sunglasses and a bright pink coat, is Doflamingo. Looking at Ming's bounty poster, Yelena felt a surge of intense hatred and instinctively wanted to stab him a few times with a knife. But she also knew that now was not the time to vent her anger, and she could only take action after it was safe to do so. Yelena carefully put away the Bailey and was about to put the bounty poster in her pocket when her blood-stained hand touched the paper, and suddenly it emitted a bright red light. How? To Yelena's horrified gaze, the text, photos, and blood on the bounty poster all disappeared, and the scratches left earlier quickly healed. In the blink of an eye, the tattered bounty poster turned into a piece of paper that glowed red. Yelena blinked. Damien has leveled up. Wrong. Her time-traveling cheat code has finally arrived. Yelena clung tightly to this last straw, her eyes shining with an extraordinary light. Several lines of small print appeared on the paper. A mysterious artifact that traverses countless worlds, the Super Bounty. By placing a bounty poster from the One Piece world, along with the blood of the wanted person onto an item, you can randomly gain one of their attributes. Attributes cannot be selected, but can be rejected. This item can only be used once per month. What a twist of fate. Yelena was as desperate as she was just moments ago, and she was now incredibly excited. Although this item has a lot of limitations, it at least provides her, an ordinary person, with a stable path to become stronger. Ming, no, Zyro Ming, wash your neck clean and wait to die. Is there a girl over there? Really? Let's go check it out. The boss only likes playing with swords, hee. Swords are nothing compared to women. The lewd yet excited voice interrupted Yelena's fantasy. She turned her head and saw two figures, one fat and one thin, rushing towards her from dozens of meters away. Oops! It was pirates who attacked the town. Yelena's excitement was extinguished by the cold water. She grabbed the red paper and ran away. That woman ran away. Quick after them. As Yelena ran, she mentally called out the Super Bounty. A cheat code. Wow. I'm just a weakling right now. I can't possibly get blood from those powerful figures with bounties on my head. You wouldn't want your crew to be bullied by those two trashy pirates behind you, would you? That's so embarrassing. Need backup. Seemingly acknowledging that Yelena's words made some sense, a few more lines of small text reappeared on the Super Bounty notice. Given that this is the host's first time binding an item, a newbie gift pack is being awarded as a reward. The host may have one opportunity to enhance their physique. However, given that the host has suffered a fatal head injury and may die on the spot at any time, the opportunity to enhance physique has been changed to healing. Additionally, the host can randomly select a bounty poster and directly obtain one of the target's attributes without needing their own blood. Note: because it's free, the attribute is not perfect. The new player gift pack does not count towards the item usage limit. A gentle energy flowed into Yelena's body, and the injury on her head healed instantly. With her head clear and her eyes bright, she even ran faster. I've already received Benefit 1. Is Benefit 2 free access to imperfect attributes? At this point, Yelena didn't have time to care about whether it was perfect or not. As long as it existed, that was enough. The pirates behind her were less than 20 meters away. Staying alive is the most important thing. Yelena, who grew up in the small town, was very familiar with the terrain. She turned a corner and headed towards the tavern ahead. The tavern is full of people drinking and boasting, who are very interested in sea adventures. Most importantly, there are bounty posters on the walls. Wow, this guy can run pretty fast. Hee, that's the kind of girl I like. Only 10 meters remained. Yelena's breathing became more and more rapid, her heart pounding, and she screamed in her heart. Damn it. Faster. Bang. Yelena burst through the half-closed door and entered the tavern. Looking around, tables and chairs were overturned all over the ground, and the bartender and guests were nowhere to be seen. They must have been scared away by the pirates and hidden away. Fortunately, the wanted poster on the wall is still there. The Great Bull, Amundo, bounty 7.5 million berries. Elout Mead, nicknamed Scissors Hand, has a bounty of 12 million berries. Raymond Thorne, the Fallen Swordsman, has a bounty of 18 million berries. There were 7 or 8 bounty posters on the wall, all for notorious bandits or pirates in the area. Yelena didn't have time to read it from beginning to end. She tore off the nearest Raymond Thorne's bounty poster and rushed behind the counter. At the same time, 2 pirates also chased into the tavern. He actually went to the room on his own initiative, he finally gave up resisting. This is a great place. Wine and women. We've hit the jackpot today. The 2 pirates approached with sinister grins. The fat man put the knife to his mouth, licking it with his scarlet tongue, enjoying the thrill of scaring his prey. The thinner man's eyes gleamed with an odd light. He threw the knife on the ground and began to take off his clothes impatiently. Yelena hid behind the counter, her right hand gripping the bounty poster tightly, about to stick it onto the super bounty poster. Just then, a piece of paper floated out from a compartment inside the counter. Perhaps sensing something, Yelena looked up. That was also a bounty notice. Edward Newgate, nicknamed Whitebeard, has a bounty of 5,046 million berries. Yelena's eyes widened instantly. Chapter 2, Imperfect Skills. 1, 2, let's go. Bang! With the combined efforts of the 2 pirates, the sturdy counter was overturned to the side, forcing Yelena, who was hiding inside, to reveal herself. Let's see where you can hide now. Hey bro, you go get some drinks. I'm going to have some fun first, he. The fat pirate, unconvinced, even stopped licking his knife and shouted, "Why should you go first? I'm stronger than you, so I'll definitely be ranked ahead of you. How about we go together?" The skinny pirate's eyes darted around as he came up with a good idea. The fat pirate patted his belly and chuckled. He, that's it. Whoosh! A crumpled piece of paper was thrown at them. The skinny pirate casually grabbed her, his smile becoming even more lewd. "Little sister, your way of resisting is quite unique. I like it. Give me more tilde." The fat pirate glanced at the paper and noticed it was a bounty poster for the fallen swordsman, Raymond Thorne. He was somewhat surprised. "You're an admirer of our boss." Yelena closed her eyes and remained silent. So it was the Thorne pirates who attacked the town. Delaying time won't help. The skinny pirate tossed the paper aside. Forget a bounty poster. Even if Boss Thorne himself showed up, he wouldn't stand a chance. He would kneel down and beg the boss to let him have the girl. "I was running too fast just now and didn't get a good look at you. I just realized how beautiful you are. I've made a profit today." The skinny pirate stretched out his rough fingers and touched Yelena's face. Just as the dirty hand got closer and closer to its target, Yelena suddenly opened her eyes. Tilde. An extremely domineering aura emanated from her body. The aura created a shockwave in the enclosed tavern space, and the skinny pirate was the first to be hit, swept head-on by the shockwave. The fat pirate didn't even have time to react before his body was swept away by the blast wave. Bang, bang. The 2 of them rolled their eyes and collapsed to the ground. Yelena got up and walked to the fat pirate's side, picked up the long sword he had dropped, and without any hesitation slashed his neck open. Then he turned around and hit the skinny pirate with the same move. Whether in her past life or this one, this was the first time she had killed someone, and apart from feeling disgusted, she felt no other discomfort. Yelena sneered. Her memories, filled with hatred and the near-death experience, had driven her almost insane. Right now, all I want to do is kill more pirates, so I don't have any psychological burden. Yelena carried her knife and walked out of the tavern, but halfway there, as if remembering something, she returned to the 2 pirates. "I almost forgot. Pirates in this world are all tanky, so just cutting off their necks isn't very safe." Yelena left penetrating wounds to the hearts, kidneys, and eyes of the two pirates, ensuring they were beyond dead, before finally sheathing her sword. Before leaving, she casually peeled off all the wanted posters in the room and put them in her pocket. Leaving the tavern, Yelena crouched low, pressed herself against the wall, and cautiously made her way into the woods behind the town. It wasn't until I hid in a thicket of bushes that I had the energy to recall what had just happened. A dozen minutes ago, when Yelena saw the Whitebeard's bounty poster, she was so surprised that her breath almost stopped. After the shock, she was overjoyed. At that moment, she didn't have time to think about why the bounty poster wasn't posted on the wall, but was hidden behind the counter. She grabbed Whitebeard's head and pressed it against the super bounty poster. At the same time, I frantically chanted in my mind, "The tremor tremor fruit. The tremor tremor fruit. The tremor tremor fruit." With this ability, she can skip the novice stage and enter the realm of near expert. With its earthquake-resistant capabilities, who in Beihai dares to challenge it? New player benefits activated. The attribute obtained this time is Whitebeard's Conqueror's Haki, 14-year-old version. Will it be inherited? Hiss. Yelena, who was silently reciting something, bit her tongue. Whitebeard's Conqueror's Haki. While it may not be as practical as the Tremor Tremor fruit for her now, it's still a top-tier prize. Inherit. But what does 14-year-old version mean? Let's go back to the present. Having temporarily escaped the crisis, Yelena finally understood what the domineering 14-year-old version meant. Down you go. Yelena stared intently at the squirrel in the bushes until her eyes began to sting, but the little squirrel showed no signs of losing consciousness. Go away, go play somewhere else. Yelena waved to shoo the squirrel out of the bushes. She sat down on the ground, her eyes filled with unspeakable regret. This is the free, imperfect ability mentioned in the super bounty. I don't know if it's because she's 14 years old now, that she has the same Conqueror's Haki as Whitebeard when he was 14. At this time, Whitebeard was just a newcomer, with a long way to go before he became famous. His Conqueror's Haki was only at a beginner level, and it was unreliable. It only erupts at critical moments of crisis. At least he has the qualities of a king, 1 in a million. Going back 800 years, my family may not have produced anyone with this ability. Through persistent self-persuasion, Yelena successfully convinced herself. She silently recited the super bounty order in her mind, and a red paper instantly appeared in front of her. The display shows her current attributes, a new feature gained after using the item for the first time. Name, Yelena. Age, 14 years old. Strength, 4. Agility, 5. Constitution, 4. Armament Haki, none. Observation Haki, none. Conqueror's Haki, beginner 30%. Skill, none. Devil Fruit ability, none. Yelena's gaze lingered on the 3 basic attributes of strength, agility, and physique for a moment, her expression gradually becoming twisted. The standard for an average adult male is 3 5s, and for her 14-year-old age, having these attributes is not bad. But this is a world where great power belongs to individuals, monsters abound, and ordinary people don't even have the right to stand and eat, let alone sit at the table. Putting aside her unpredictable Conqueror's Haki, she is now an absolute weakling, unable to even defeat the lowest-ranking pirate under normal circumstances. We must strengthen our forces as soon as possible. Yelena emerged from the bushes and headed higher. Having chosen a suitable spot, Yelena tucked the knife into her belt and began climbing the tree. The higher you stand, the farther you can see. She stood on a tree branch halfway up the mountain, with a panoramic view of what was happening at the town's port. The Navy arrived so quickly. Oh, I remember now. There are naval bases in other port cities on Swallow Island. Warships appeared on the sea, and soon after, the warships clashed with the pirate ships, and a large number of naval personnel landed. Yelena pulled out a crumpled bounty poster from her pocket. The fallen swordsman, Raymond Thorne, was the pirate captain who attacked the town. A bounty of 18 million is nothing in the Grand Line, and it's not even considered a big fish in the North Blue, where pirate forces are numerous. But to Yelena, he was an invincible powerhouse. If you can obtain her blood and place it on the item, along with the bounty order, the resulting attributes will greatly enhance her strength. Before the Navy arrived, she was hesitant to take any action, not knowing if they might kill her with a single sword strike. The current level of Conqueror's Haki is unlikely to be very effective against seasoned pirate captains. Now that the Navy has arrived, Yelena feels a sense of confidence. I recall that the naval captain stationed on Swallow Island was quite capable and well regarded. This is the North Sea, not the East Sea, so the Navy's strength shouldn't be too weak. Yelena decided to take a gamble. Fortune favors the bold. The fierce battle between the Navy and pirates presents a perfect opportunity to scavenge for loot. Once today is over, where will she find a pirate who is strong, has a bounty, and might be injured? After making up her mind, Yelena slowly climbed down the tree and ran towards the town. Chapter 3. Hang in there, Colonel. After the Navy arrived, all the pirates scattered throughout the town retreated towards the port. The crisis was temporarily averted, and many townspeople emerged from their hiding places and rushed home to check their losses. Every street Yelena passed, she could hear curses coming from inside the buildings. Those bastards. I saved up for 5 years. I told you not to hide under the floorboards, but you wouldn't listen. Yelena patted her pockets, unsure whether to be thankful for her foresight in carrying all her valuables with her, or saddened by her poverty, having only a few Peel bills as her entire fortune. As I passed the tavern, I heard people inside cursing and swearing. Yelena hurried past the door, stealing a glance in the process. The brief moment was enough for her to see what was inside. 2 men dressed as bartenders were trembling as they cleaned the blood-stained floor. The bodies of the fat and thin pirates were nowhere to be seen. Yelena guessed that the bartender had probably dragged her to a secluded corner and hidden her away. A hint of guilt appeared on her face. She had killed someone and then left the body unattended, leaving others to clean up the mess. She couldn't do that again. Before they had even left the tavern's perimeter, a wail came from inside the room. My treasured bounty poster. I don't know which thief stole it. It has the name of the man I admire most on it. Stop screaming. Clean up the blood. We need to find a place to bury the body later. If the pirates come back and find our comrade's body, we're finished. Sigh, I wonder who killed those 2 pirates. Luckily, the shop didn't suffer any major losses. Upon hearing this, Yelena quickened her pace even further. After rounding another street, the view ahead suddenly opened up, and the sounds of fighting and gunfire became clearer. We've arrived at the dock. Yelena hid behind some ruins, panting heavily, until her breathing gradually evened out before peeking out to look at the sea. At the dock square, hundreds of people were fighting fiercely, accompanied by screams and blood splattering into the air from time to time. The sea is also unstable. In the struggle for control of the ships, the Navy and pirates engaged in fierce boarding battles, with severed limbs and broken bodies constantly being thrown overboard, staining large areas of the sea red. Bloody scenes unfolded one after another, and Yelena's pupils continued to tremble. Corpses, so many corpses. There are pirates, marines, and townspeople. Even though she had just killed someone with her own hands, she was still a little unaccustomed to it. These scenes before us are nothing short of a depiction of hell. At this moment, Yelena finally understood that she was not in a virtual comic book world where few people could be killed, no matter how hard she tried. It's a brutal pirate world that's truly bloody, and where life can vanish in an instant. It's a chaotic world. In this world full of crises and surprises, without strong power to protect yourself, you probably won't be able to sleep soundly. To survive and to take revenge, we must become stronger at all costs. Yelena's eyes hardened again as she hid behind the ruins, carefully searching for her target. There is no square. There were no pirate ships either. Yelena shifted her position several times and finally spotted a figure resembling the target on the western beach, far from the pier. She stared intently and saw a person in a white cloak moving back and forth with a dark figure. Their movements suggested they were fighting. The two moved very fast, constantly changing positions. Ordinary pirates don't have that kind of strength. Yelena had her answer. They must be the captain of the Swallow Island Naval Branch and Raymond Thorn, the captain of the Thorn Pirates, known as the Fallen Swordsman. There are battlefields everywhere. I can't get caught up in them. I need to take a detour. Yelena quietly retreated, leaving the ruins and hiding in the alley behind. She was familiar with the town's layout, and soon she bypassed the main battlefield at the dock and arrived at the western beach. When they arrived, the Colonel and Thorn were already fighting far apart, more than 100 meters away. This made it convenient for Yelena to move around. She carefully collected the blood from the beach. At this point, she couldn't distinguish whether it was the Colonel's or Thorn's, so she had to try them one by one. Summon the super bounty and press the blood and Thorn's crumpled wanted poster onto it. Blood is invalid. Yelena was not discouraged. There was a lot of blood on the beach, and perhaps this particular pool was the Colonel's. Try again. Blood is invalid. What a coincidence. Try again. Blood is invalid. 8 pools of blood were found in a row, but all were ineffective. Yelena's eyes gradually shifted from anticipation to blankness. She was absolutely frantic. No matter how much we planned, we never expected the Colonel to be such a weakling. No wonder they kept getting further and further away. They were being pressured and beaten. Could Thorn have escaped without any injury? Look what I've discovered. A mocking voice reached Yelena's ears. She looked up and saw Thorn and the Colonel fighting as they approached her. A lone mouse, her. Instead of hiding in a dark corner, it insists on getting close to a predator. Don't you think that's courting death, Colonel? A mocking smile appeared on Thorn's cold face. He spoke, but his hands moved with surprising efficiency. Each sword strike was faster than the last, overwhelming the opponent from all sides. The Colonel struggled to defend himself. Unable to turn around to see who was standing behind him, he could only shout a warning. Run! As far away as possible. As expected of the righteous Navy, even when facing death, they still have the mind to care about others. Yelena picked up a handful of sand, stuffed it into her pocket, and fled towards the woods. As I ran, I kept recalling what I had just witnessed, and my heart was pounding. That pirate is injured. As the two drew closer, Yelena could clearly see that the Colonel was covered in wounds, and his justice coat was almost soaked with blood. But Thorn was not entirely unharmed. Blood was clearly flowing from his exposed chest and left shoulder, slowly dripping down. Well done, Colonel. I admit I just cursed at you, and I apologize. The sound of metal clashing behind her grew closer and closer. Yelena turned around and saw that the two fighters were attacking her again. Hang in there, Colonel. Thorn, you were once a court swordsman of the kingdom of Rubinir. Why did you fall so low as to become a pirate? I've had enough of this country of liars. Spending all my time playing house with a bunch of idiotic royalty is nothing compared to the thrill of being a pirate. I'll wipe you all out, my bounty will skyrocket, and then I'll set sail on the Grand Line. As she ran, Yelena suddenly turned and meandered towards the beach. Why is that rat scurrying back again? This is so annoying. Damn pirate. I'm your opponent. Heh, I'll see today whether your sense of justice can protect her. Yelena's gaze swept across the beach, and soon a few drops of scarlet blood caught her attention. The amount is so small, it shouldn't have come from the colonel. She grabbed a handful of blood-stained sand and pressed it onto the prop along with the wanted poster. It has to succeed. Identification successful. The attribute acquired this time is Raymond Thorn's swordsmanship. Inherit. Inherit. Chapter 4, First Battle. As Yelena nodded, a ray of light entered her mind, instantly filling her memory with countless images of sword practice. Her fingers rested on the hilt of the sword at her waist, and an urge to draw her sword surged within her. That's what I thought in my heart, and that's what I did with my hands. Yelena drew her long sword, the blade still stained with the blood of the fat and thin pirates. She gripped the hilt tightly with both hands, and following the moves that flashed through her mind, she rose up and thrust forward with all her might. Clang! Sparks flew, and the clang of metal echoed across the beach. Yelena was jolted awake, and she landed squarely on her bottom as soon as she stood up. Unable to resist shaking his wrist, which was numb from the shock, he cursed inwardly. This pirate has some nerve. Raymond Thorn's sneer froze, his eyes filled with astonishment and suspicion. Seeing the rat squatting on the beach in a daze, he assumed that the other had finally given up and was waiting to die. Feeling bored, he deflected the colonel's attack and prepared to send the rat flying with a single sword strike. But to his surprise, the opponent was able to defend against his slash. Let's use the most familiar method. The court swordsmanship of the kingdom of Lubnir. This guy can do it too. Who is she? The king sent a swordsman to hunt him down. Stab it. Raymond Thorn hesitated briefly, and the naval captain he had repelled seized the opportunity, slashing him hard in the back with his sword. A sharp pain shot through him, instantly clearing Thorn's mind. He cursed angrily. The scars on my back. Aye. You damned rat. Thorn covered his eyes and hid to the side. Yelena withdrew her hand, letting the sand slip freely from her palm, and finished his sentence. A scar on the back is a swordsman's shame, Colonel. You shouldn't have slashed someone from behind like that. The colonel, panting heavily, stood with difficulty holding his knife. Upon hearing the girl's words, his blood-covered face showed a hint of helplessness. You can't be too fussy when dealing with vicious pirates. You're still young and don't understand the reasons behind it. No, I mean you should just stab him. A penetrating wound is much more effective than a slash. Yelena grabbed another handful of sand and threw it at Raymond Thorn. Damn it, why isn't there any lime on the beach? That stuff is better than sand. The colonel was dumbfounded. This person was not the civilian girl he was protecting, but a man-eating flower with methods as vicious as a pirate. With limited time and no chance to think too much, the colonel drew his knife and stabbed at the enemy. Thorn finally managed to use his well-developed tear ducts to wash the sand out of his eyes, but as soon as he opened them, he was greeted by a white expanse. Are you coming again? He grabbed his greatsword, swung it horizontally, and the wind from the sword immediately blew away the sand. Very well. I'll remember you. Thorn dodged the colonel's thrust, his feet slamming heavily onto the sand as he charged toward the man who dared to use underhanded tactics against him. Brash, brash. Yelena's 3 consecutive sand-throwing attacks were all dodged by the enemy, and she temporarily lost her chance to escape, so she could only swing her sword to meet the attack. Clang! The samurai sword and the greatsword clashed. Yelena felt a powerful force strike her, and in that instant her hands trembled and she almost lost her grip on the hilt. A soft snapping sound came, and in Yelena's pleading eyes, the samurai sword, which had only recently been captured, broke off from the tip down to the third of its length. She was also thrown off by this force and tumbled onto a sand pile 10 meters away. Cough, cough. Blood flowed from Yelena's mouth, and her whole body felt like it had been hit by a car. The intense pain made her face contort in agony. Miscalculation. Yelena was pale. Her swordsmanship was comparable to Thorn's, but the difference in strength was too great. She couldn't even block a single move from him head-on. HMPH, His Majesty the King is getting increasingly irrational, actually sending someone like you to kill me. Thorn had already determined that the young female swordsman not far away was from the kingdom of Lubnia, just like him, and was a court swordsman. He sneered, preparing to step forward and end the other man's life, when he heard the sound of something cutting through the air behind him again. You think you can use the same move twice? Thorn turned to block the colonel's sudden attack, his eyes blazing with murderous intent. This navy is too tenacious. Take him down first, then kill the swordsman. Thorn swung his greatsword like a windmill, his attacks becoming even more ferocious than before. The colonel was once again caught in a fierce battle. On the other hand, Yelena felt a little uneasy. I've acquired the swordsmanship, and my purpose for this trip has been achieved. Perhaps it's all right to leave now. Realizing the gap between herself and the enemy, Yelena began to consider retreating. I just got this cheat code. I can't die here. It would be such a waste. I should hide and secretly develop my strength. With the support of the super bounty, I'm sure I can become a super strong player in the future. At that time, revenge, fame across the seas, and even becoming the strongest in the world wouldn't be impossible. With that thought in mind, Yelena cautiously retreated towards the woods. Damn pirate! In the name of justice, I will not let you leave here today. Heh, what kind of bullshit justice is this? Save your energy for screaming. Looking at the naval captain not far away, whose injuries had worsened, but who was still fighting to the death, Yelena's eyes reddened. She gripped her thigh tightly, and the veins on the back of her hand gradually bulged. Damn it, move. This isn't a place for you. Find somewhere to hide. You'll be safe once these pirates leave the island. Unfortunately, the self-hypnosis did not go smoothly. Suddenly, other voices came into Yelena's mind. It was Thorn, laughing wildly. If I wipe out you bunch of bastards, my bounty will skyrocket, and then I'll set sail on the Grand Line. If the colonel is defeated, the Thorn pirates will return, and the townspeople who thought they were safe will be killed in their homes by the pirates. I think of the couple wailing in their street-side room as pirates stole their savings, and the bartender burying a corpse in the tavern. Thinking of the bounty poster for the white-bearded man who was absorbed by the prop. Yelena could no longer take a step back. She moved her hand with its prominent veins off her thigh and placed it on the hilt of the knife. If I were to run away like this, I would be doing a disservice to the first ability I gained. If Whitebeard knew that the one who inherited his youthful arrogance was such a coward, he would probably be so disgusted that he couldn't even drink. Colonel Lind, I will remember how you struggled, so die in peace. Thorn kicked Colonel Lind to the ground and then swung his sword at his neck. Powder. Thorn shuddered and stopped what he was doing. He looked down and saw a broken katana protruding from his abdomen. As it turns out, the same move can indeed be used twice, only the second time it's used by a different person. You damned rat. Thorn's face twisted instantly. Ignoring his opponent, he turned and swung his sword at the person who dared to ambush him. Yelena's legs went weak, and she sat down on the beach, dodging the horizontal slash while pulling her weapon from the enemy's body. Hiss! Blood gushed from his abdomen. Thorn's vision went black, and he almost lost his balance. But what he couldn't tolerate, even more than the physical injuries, was that he had been successfully ambushed by the weak twice in a row. This made him feel that his dignity had been insulted. Die! 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 Thorn raised his greatsword and slashed down at Yelena's head. Knowing that she was too weak to withstand the enemy's attacks, Yelena simply gave up and rolled to the side. In no time, the man circled Thorn on the ground, narrowly avoiding 5 or 6 slashes. Damn rat, all you can do is dodge. Show me your swordsmanship and face me head on. After several unsuccessful attempts, Thorn's anger burned even more fiercely. Colonel Lind, standing to the side, was completely dumbfounded. What kind of skill was that? Was he too straightforward in his fight with the enemy? How about trying lying down next time? Thorn swung his sword at Yelena again. Swish! As expected, the strike missed its mark. He sneered, his wrist flicked rapidly, and before the first sword even hit the ground, the second sword was already out. The blade flashed and hurtled toward Yelena's head. Let's see how you hide. Chapter 5, Who Taught This Thing? Thorn's change of tactics came too suddenly and too quickly. Yelena didn't have time to dodge and instinctively held the knife up in front of her. Clang! A powerful force struck, the back of the blade slamming heavily onto Yelena. Her expression changed instantly, her wrists trembled, and a sharp pain shot through her chest. She was pulled deep into the sand by the force. Yelena suppressed the urge to vomit blood, grabbed the ground with her other hand, and swung her arm wildly, sending the white sand flying toward the enemy's eyes. You only know how to use such underhanded tricks. The distance was too close, and Thorn didn't have time to use his sword wind to clear away the sand. He could only close his eyes and shield his face with his hands. He cursed inwardly, which bastard taught this disciple? They have no dignity whatsoever as swordsmen. If he knew who the other person's master was, he would kill that guy with a single sword strike. Yelena didn't care what the enemy thought. So be it, she just wanted to survive. Taking advantage of this brief respite, she scrambled up from the beach, using both her hands and feet to create distance between herself and the enemy. The lazy donkey rolling technique shouldn't be used too often, as it's too easy for the enemy to figure out. Yelena glanced up behind the enemy. Colonel Lind was breathing heavily, trying to recover. Judging from the other person's trembling body, she estimated that this person could only launch one more attack at most. Yelena immediately made a decision. She would spare no effort to create an opportunity for the colonel to launch a sneak attack. She nodded slightly to the colonel, then gripped the broken sword and launched an attack on the enemy. Seeing the girl rushing towards him, Thorn had only one thought in his mind. He couldn't give her another chance to grab sand from the ground. He disliked the kingdom of Lubnis, but he was proud of the swordsmanship he had learned at court and would not tolerate anyone using the same swordsmanship but resorting to despicable tricks. Thorn's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Today, he would cut down the person who had insulted the way of the sword. He committed murder, arson, and robbery. He did all sorts of evil deeds, but he was an excellent swordsman. With this sense of pride, Thorn swung his blade and charged at his opponent. Clang, clang, clang. The sounds of metal clashing against metal echoed continuously from the location where the two were fighting. Yelena fought and retreated, or rather, she was beaten back step by step. The enemy was strong, so he used his two-handed sword as if it were a one-handed sword, wielding it with great force. Before they had exchanged 10 blows, Yelena's hands were cracked open with several cuts, and blood immediately flowed into her palms. We cannot lose. We absolutely cannot lose. If you lose, you'll die. Yelena hardened her heart and gritted her teeth to endure it. The thick blood almost fused her palm with the knife. Is that all the strength you have? Could it be that you've been so focused on sword practice that you've neglected your basic training? Who is your third-rate teacher? Maybe I even know him. Your swordsmanship is quite good, but your weapon is too poor. Didn't the person who sent you think of getting you a better weapon? A katana is not suitable for this kind of swordsmanship. Oh, right. It's a waste for a rat like you to use any famous sword. You'd be better off focusing your energy on learning dirty tricks. Seeing the numerous nicks and chips that had appeared on his opponent's broken blade, Thorn couldn't help but laugh out loud. Yelena fought back with difficulty, glancing at the greatsword in the enemy's hand, a look of longing flashing in her eyes. After clashing with two weapons in succession, there were only a few shallow dents on it. The samurai sword in her hand, which was clearly a cheap knockoff, was worlds apart from the other person's sword. Defeat the pirates. The sword is mine. The desire to survive, the indomitable will to never give up, and the lust to obtain the treasure. These three extreme thoughts merged into one, unleashing unprecedented power within Yelena. Okay. Thorn noticed something was wrong. The man who had just been so weak and looked like he was about to be cut down by the sword suddenly had a surge of power. An ordinary slash, accompanied by the opponent's sharp gaze, actually made him think that this person was invincible. Thorn's sword-wielding movements slowed to a visible pace. Panic surged through him, cold sweat poured uncontrollably from his head, and his eyes were quickly filled with horror. What's affecting me? There is absolutely no such power in court swordsmanship. What is this? Ugh. Thorn lost his last chance to ask a question. He lowered his head, and the blood-stained tip of the knife emerged from his heart. The next second, the broken knife in front of him pierced through his abdomen. As his face contorted in pain, both knives began to spin simultaneously. Puff! Yelena and Colonel Lind drew their weapons one after the other, and a large amount of blood gushed from Thorn's mouth and chest. He trembled as he tried to swing his sword, but his arm only rose halfway before his body fell uncontrollably to the ground, his eyes wide open and lifeless. Principal Lin breathed a sigh of relief and plopped down on the sand pile next to the corpse. He smiled as he looked at the girl whose clothes were stained with blood and raised his chin. Here, the penetrating wound you wanted. Ignoring the colonel's teasing, Yelena dropped the tattered knife in her hand and bent down to pick up Thorn's greatsword. I gave it a couple of casual shakes, and as expected, it was very heavy. Yelena frowned. It wasn't difficult to wield the sword a few times, but with her current strength, it would be hard to use it as an everyday weapon. She hadn't forgotten that when she sparred with Thorn, she had been knocked to the ground many times and even sent flying several meters. If it weren't for good luck, the body would probably be cold by now. It seems that the most important thing now is to strengthen one's own basic strength. Only in this way can the power of the court swordsmanship be maximized. While preoccupied with her own thoughts, Yelena's hands moved swiftly. To Colonel Lin's astonishment, she plunged her sword into Thorn's neck, making sure the tip touched the sand beneath before stopping. You. Colonel Lind opened his mouth, but couldn't utter the rest of the words. Is it to accuse the other party of being cruel? Finishing off an enemy after a battle is perfectly correct, and he has done it before. He was slightly uncomfortable with this action being performed on a teenage girl. But then he thought again. This person was no ordinary girl, but someone who fought alongside him to defeat the pirate captain. As long as you treat the other party as the stronger one, all your actions become reasonable. I am Colonel Lind of the Swallow Island Naval Branch. You must be from the kingdom of Rubanier. Shall we take this pirate's corpse back to His Majesty the King? With Colonel Lind's keen eye, he could naturally tell that the girl's swordsmanship was of the same origin as Thorn's, and he made a guess in his mind. If this person brings the body back, the Navy can save a large sum of money on the bounty. Before Colonel Lind's relief could fade, the girl's ruthless words shattered his illusions. My father was a court swordsman in the kingdom when he was young, but that was a long time ago. Now I have no connection with the kingdom anymore. I am here as a bounty hunter. Having honed her skills in society over the past few years, Yelena could now lie without batting an eye, her gaze never wavering. Bounty hunter. Colonel Lind was utterly despondent. The worst had happened. Bounty hunters are a group even more greedy than hyenas. It's difficult to snatch food from their mouths. Seeing the middle-aged Navy man covered in wounds and sporting a small moustache, Yelena couldn't go too far. This pirate is incredibly strong. It would be difficult for either of us to defeat him alone. How about this? I'll only take half of the bounty. Yelena felt that her statement was very fair. Without her presence, Colonel Lind would undoubtedly be lying on the ground right now. But without the Colonel's restraint, she might not have had the chance to unleash an even stronger conqueror's haki to intimidate the enemy and kill them. Colonel Lind, who had been constantly beaten down by pirates, understood the reason behind it. Even though he was reluctant, he could only agree. 9 million berries. Once I return to the Marine branch, I will have someone raise the money immediately. It's a pleasure working with you. Yelena tore a piece of cloth from Thorn's body, wiped the blade clean, and then helped the Colonel up with a smile. I have a small request. I hope the Colonel will grant it, considering we are fighting the enemy together. Chapter 6. Joining the Navy in Chapter 6. A small request. Judging from your tone, this request is no small matter. Colonel Lind wanted to refuse, but when he saw Thorn's lifeless body on the ground and recalled his narrow escape from death, he realized that the girl was quite strong, and he hesitated. Maybe we should listen to it. Although the other party is not easy to deal with, they are not pirates or enemies. Ahem, you go ahead. Colonel Lind clutched his chest and coughed twice on purpose, thinking to himself, I'm in such a sorry state, you shouldn't be too rude to me. Don't be so polite, just call me Yelena. Yelena was a little unaccustomed to hearing people around the same age, as her father addressed her with such formal respect. I live in the small town behind here. Some of my neighbors know me. You can ask around. I'm saying this to prove that I have a clean background and am not a suspicious person of unknown origin. I have been practicing swordsmanship at home for many years, but today's battle revealed many shortcomings. I thought of training with you at the Navy branch to improve my skills. In return, when you go out to hunt down pirates, I can serve as an unofficial member of the fighting force. Just like today, we'll split the bounty 50-50. Yelena made her request, half-jokingly. After a brief period of consideration, she concluded that temporarily following the Navy's operations would maximize her own strength. The Naval branch has professional training facilities and a relatively systematic training program for soldiers. Following their training is more effective than training on your own. The Navy has a powerful intelligence network. Wherever pirates are rampaging, they will be the first to receive the news, which is much more convenient than foolishly waiting on the island for pirates to come to them. Most importantly, her home was destroyed by pirates, and she had nowhere to live. Finding temporary accommodation with food and drink was exactly what she needed at the moment. Colonel Lind looked somewhat troubled upon hearing the girl's words. Outsiders training with the Navy. There's no precedent for this. But since you want to receive training at the Navy branch, why not just be more straightforward and get straight to the point? After a moment of silence, Colonel Lind stared intently at the girl and asked the question that had been nagging at him. Why don't you just join the Navy? He has a clean background, is skilled in swordsmanship, and is young and has great potential. This is an outstanding new recruit that the Navy couldn't find anywhere else. If the other party agrees, he will immediately recruit the person into the army, skipping the ranks of privates and making them officers directly. Join the Navy. Yelena rejected the answer without even thinking. She wouldn't do the job of being a lackey for the Celestial Dragons. Most importantly, the Navy doesn't have the same freedom as bounty hunters. As their strength increases, they can fight whichever pirate they want without having to consider any balance or worry about the consequences. She has a deep-seated hatred for a certain Shichibuka. After joining the Marines, will her superiors allow her to take revenge? General Zephyr, who made outstanding military achievements, is a living example. She just wanted to find a place to spend her early learning period. She didn't want to put herself in any constraints. However, there was no need to explain these things to Colonel Lind. I'll see. Maybe after staying in the branch for a while, I'll consider joining the Navy. Yelena's attitude was ambiguous. She neither gave a definite answer nor explicitly refused. All right, I agree. The battle in town isn't over yet. Let's go over there and capture the rest of the pirates. Colonel Lind didn't have time to think too much. Once he had recovered, he broke free from Yelena's support, grabbed a knife in one hand, and dragged Thorn's body with the other, heading towards the dock. Yelena followed behind, secretly opening the super bounty warrant. She felt that her power had increased after inheriting Thorn's court swordsmanship, and she wanted to confirm it. Name, Yelena. Age, 14 years old. Strength, 5. Agility, 6. Constitution, 5. Armament, Haki, none. Observation, Haki, none. Conqueror's Haki, beginner, 60%. Skill, court swordsmanship. Devil fruit ability, none. Yelena's eyes showed some surprise. All three basic attributes had increased simultaneously, especially strength, which had increased by 2 points. It is already on par with adult males. She stared at the skill bar and quickly understood the reason for this upgrade. After acquiring the court swordsmanship, her body was adjusted by the super bounty order to a state where she could skillfully use swordsmanship. After all, even if a normal person only practices swordsmanship and not body techniques, after several years of training, their various physical qualities will improve to a certain extent. Yelena was secretly delighted. Fortune really does come from danger. She had made a fortune this time. Just as she was about to close the panel, her gaze was suddenly drawn to a line of text above the skill bar. Conqueror's Haki, beginner 60%. It used to be 30%, but the domineering aura has increased. When did this happen? Yelena recalled the details of the battle just now, and the images flashed through her mind. Suddenly, she realized that something was wrong. Just before the broken blade pierced the enemy's abdomen, the enemy's movements seemed to pause for a moment. She initially thought it was caused by the colonel's sneak attack, piercing her heart. Now, thinking back, without that brief pause, the colonel's fatal blow wouldn't have been so easy to land. The enemy's movements were likely affected by the conqueror's haki she unintentionally emitted. Yelena was a bit of a headache. Her domineering aura was a powerful weapon, but when she could use it was not up to her. I wonder what changes will occur once it breaks through the initial stage. That's the captain. How is that possible? Some sharp-eyed pirates noticed a tall figure walking slowly from the west. Before they could even see the person's face, they were terrified by the corpse in the other person's hand. The usually cruel and ruthless captain was dragged over by the navy like a dead dog. How is this possible? As the figure clad in the coat of justice drew closer, more and more pirates discovered the true nature of the corpse. Many stood frozen in place, even forgetting the fight. Colonel Lind raised the corpse in his hand, his deep voice echoing throughout the entire dock. The fallen swordsman Raymond Thorn has been defeated and is dead. The remaining members of the Thorn pirates, lay down your weapons and surrender immediately. Otherwise, I'll personally send you to meet your captain. This shout startled many pirates. At least half of them instinctively dropped their weapons and crouched on the ground. The navy cheered as they tied the surrendered pirates together. But there are also many desperate pirates. Some of them jump into the sea and swim towards the pirate ship. Someone pushed aside their companion, blocking the way, and ran wildly into the town. How dare they resist to the very end? Colonel Lind tossed the body to his men and, sword in hand, chased after several pirates fleeing toward the town. These henchmen weren't as difficult to deal with as their captain. The colonel swiftly chopped several men down with his knife, as easily as cutting melons and vegetables. He turned to look at the pirates fleeing towards the town from other directions, took a step with his right foot, then immediately pulled it back. He chuckled and shook his head. Looks like they don't need me here. The colonel turned and strode toward the pirate ship. He wanted to take advantage of his remaining strength and wipe out the entire pirate gang as soon as possible. 6 pirates rushed into the street in a disheveled state. Why didn't the navy give chase? Forget everything else. Escaping is the priority. Where can we escape to? Let's grab some hostages and trade them for a ship with the navy. Great idea. Damn it, I thought Thorn was some kind of tough guy, but he can't even beat the navy. If I'd known this would happen, I definitely wouldn't have boarded his ship. Look, there's someone up ahead. Great. It's an injured girl. Brothers, a hostage delivered right to our doorstep. Grab her. Chapter 7, Ordinary People. Yelena was familiar with the surrounding terrain. While Colonel Lind was dragging the corpse to scare people, she had already taken the lead and stood guard on the only road leading from the dock to the town. With Captain Thorn dead, the pirates are leaderless. Someone might storm the town, and if they're lucky, capture a few hostages, which could give them a chance to survive. Just as she stopped, a noisy commotion reached her ears. Turning her head, she saw 6 pirates of different sizes excitedly charging towards her. Yelena frowned. This scene looked somewhat familiar. But don't mistake her for the weak, runaway girl she once was. She's very. Yelena's pupils suddenly contracted, and she quickly hid in the alleyway next to her. Pirates with guns. She cursed inwardly. Isn't your captain a swordsman? Why are you using a gun instead of a sword, you underlings? Yelena dared not be careless. With her current reaction speed, she probably couldn't dodge the bullet. The girl is hiding. Let's go after them and see. As the pirates' voices drew closer, Yelena quietly slipped her hand into her pocket. The pirates arrived at the alley entrance and were about to look inside when a large cloud of white mist blew towards them. Ah, my eyes. You despicable bastard. It wasn't until tiny particles got into their eyes that they realized what wasn't white mist at all, but sea sand. Yelena seized the opportunity and slashed at her target with 2 consecutive sword strikes. Laugh, laugh. Blood splattered as 2 gun-wielding pirates clutched their throats and collapsed to the ground. Yelena rolled on the spot, picked up the pistol and rifle next to the corpse, and looked at the 4 remaining men with knives. Only then did a smile return to her face. Very good, the threat is resolved. The surviving pirates immediately realized they had encountered a tough opponent. All thoughts of taking hostages were thrown to the back of their minds, and they scattered and fled while rubbing their eyes. Without hesitation, Yelena chased after the person closest to her and stabbed him in the back of the heart with her sword. She then pulled out the blade and rushed towards the next person. The pirates ahead had limited vision and couldn't see the road ahead. As they ran, they suddenly tripped over some debris. Please, please, let me go. I'll never be a sea monster again. Aye. Yelena shook the blood off her sword and rubbed her sore arm. After using all his strength for only 4 moves, he was already starting to get tired. This dual-wielding sword is definitely not something a weak person can wield. My desire for increased power has grown even stronger. She turned to look at the remaining 2 pirates, who, in their panic, were fleeing towards the dock. Yelena touched the remaining fine sand in her pocket and thought to herself that this trick was really effective. If used at the right time, it could cause the enemy to be temporarily blinded. At the same time, she sighed inwardly. If she weren't so weak, she wouldn't have wanted to resort to these underhanded tricks. He keeps throwing sand to launch sneak attacks. He doesn't act like a swordsman at all. Where is the glory? Yelena put down her sword, picked up her rifle, and awkwardly pulled the bolt. Aim at the pirate's back and pull the trigger. Boom! A pirate clutched his knee and fell to the ground. Great, you hit it. He pulled the bolt back again, aiming at the pirate running in the lead. Boom! The pirates keep running. Boom! The shot missed again. Click! We're out of bullets. Left with no other choice, Yelena threw down her rifle, picked up her sword, and gave chase. As they passed the pirate with the injured knee, they made sure to see him off on his final journey. With the man on the ground breathing his last, only one of the 6 pirates who had stormed into the town remained. The only child rubbed his eyes hard. The intense stimulation caused tears to stream down his face. He blinked, finally able to see the surrounding light clearly. Damn woman. I'll definitely get my hands on her next time. Who will be spared? Puff. The sound of a sharp blade piercing through flesh reached the pirate's ears. He looked down and saw a bright silver blade protruding from his chest. His blinks became weaker and weaker, and his eyes, which had only recently regained their sight, were completely swallowed by darkness. Phew, it's finally resolved. After going from pirate captain to pirate henchman, Yelena was exhausted from several battles. Now that she was relaxed, she felt weak in the legs, and her arms were so tired that she could barely lift them. She walked to the ruins where she had been before, used a few planks to cover her figure, and slowly leaned her back against the collapsed wall. She'd leave the finishing touches to the Navy. She should rest for a while. On the dock, the pirate attack finally came to an end, as Colonel Lind slew down the last standing enemy. He knelt on the ground, leaning on his weapon, and only had time to order the collection of the soldiers' bodies and the treatment of the wounded soldiers and townspeople by the medics before losing consciousness and collapsing to the ground. About half an hour later, Yelena opened her eyes and cautiously peeked out from the ruins. She found that there were many sailors dressed in white on the dock square, carrying stretchers and running around. Medic. Yelena perked up, stood up from the ruins, and waved to the angels in white not far away. "Hey, there's an injured civilian here. Come quickly and treat her. Hurry up, or people will die." Injured civilians. Upon hearing the call, a male and a female medic rushed over carrying a stretcher and a first aid kit. "Where are they?" The female soldier pushed Yelena aside and searched through the ruins, but couldn't find any injured civilians. "Here, please save me," Yelena gestured, raising her hand. The two medics fell silent as they looked at the girl with a sword and a gun in front of them. The injury was visible. But civilians. What ordinary person carries so many weapons when they go out? The two became wary. Could this guy be a remnant of the pirates, luring people here to kill them? Do they look like people who are easily fooled? "I know Colonel Lind. Hurry up and treat my wounds. I'll ask him to promote you guys later." The male soldier nodded in realization. "I see. We were being rude. I'll check for you now." The female soldier slapped the man to the ground. "Are you an idiot? Just because she says she's an acquaintance doesn't mean she is. I could say I know a naval admiral." Despite the unbearable pain inside her body and the gradual numbness of her wounds, Yelena decided to disregard her pride for the sake of her health. She rubbed her still childish face, widened her eyes, and tried her best to make a wronged expression. "Sister, I'm not a bad person. Please help me. It hurts so much." "Ugh, Tilda." Yelena felt disgusted with herself. She hardened her heart. If this tactic didn't work, she would hold a knife to the medics' necks and force them to treat her. "At worst, I can visit them with gifts to apologize after I recover from my injuries." "Hiss." The female soldier clutched her chest, her heart pounding. This child looks dirty, but he's kind of cute when he calls his older sister with a wronged expression. Such a cute child can't be a pirate. The female soldier quickly opened the first aid kit, and to the disbelief of the male soldiers, carefully cleaned the girl's wounds. "What are you looking at? Turn around." She glared fiercely at the male soldier, but when she turned to look at Yelena, her gaze instantly became as warm as a spring breeze. "Tell me if it hurts, okay? My name is Eve. You can call me Eve Nietzsche Tilda." Chapter 8, Matchup. The two medics were simple-minded, and Yelena learned about Colonel Lind's situation from them without much effort. The colonel is the bravest and most powerful Navy officer I have ever seen. He first single-handedly defeated Raymond Thorne, a notorious pirate, in the nearby waters. After being wounded, he fought against multiple enemies, successively killing more than 30. Even when he collapsed from exhaustion, he did not put down his sword. While Eve was busy bandaging, the male soldier looked on with admiration and talked at length about how great his superior was. As he spoke, the male soldier looked around, and finding that he hadn't attracted anyone's attention, he leaned closer and continued in a low voice. "I'll tell you a secret, but don't tell anyone else. Colonel Lind and that Akinu from headquarters were recruits in the same class. They even shared a dormitory when they enlisted. They are all the Navy personnel I admire most." Yelena's eyes flashed with surprise. The colonel and Akinu were actually old acquaintances. He recalled how, without his help, Colonel Lind almost lost his life against a pirate with a bounty of less than 20 million, nearly getting hacked to death. Yelena simply couldn't bear to tell this admirer just how vast the gap was between his two idols. "All done." Eve tied a bow on the bandage and nodded in satisfaction. "Sorry if my colleague disturbed you. Please don't mind. Today is his first time on the battlefield, and he may have been shocked by the bloody and brutal scenes. He's not usually this talkative." Yelena shook her head. Why would she care? She wished the male soldiers would talk more, so that she could obtain more intelligence. Thank you so much. You are all kind and excellent sailors. By the way, is Captain Lind on the warship right now, sister? Could you take me to him? Eve looked troubled. The girl in front of her looked very cute and spoke very pleasantly. She was willing to help treat the other person's wounds, but that didn't mean she would completely trust her. Bringing strangers onto a warship is too risky. Who would dare agree without orders from a superior? All right, I'll go back and pack my things first. I'll trouble you to go and explain the situation to Colonel Lind. He knows me. Yelena got up and ran into the town. Sigh you. The male soldier reached out to stop the girl, but she was fast and quickly disappeared into the street. After a moment of silence, Eve took a deep breath, picked up the first aid kit, and headed towards the dock. Let's go see if there are any other wounded who need treatment. As for that girl, I'll ask my father about it after we're done with this. Yelena returned to her front door and looked at the collapsed house, feeling an overwhelming sadness. Her home, where she had lived for over a decade, was destroyed by cannon fire. If the fighting hadn't ended, she would have wanted to kill a few more pirates to vent her anger. The room was filled with furniture, some broken, some shattered, almost none of it usable. She rummaged through the rubble for 7 or 8 minutes, finally managing to pull out a photo album, 2 pairs of shoes, and 3 sets of clothes from the bedroom. Yelena pulled a sheet from the collapsed bed, shook off the dust, put her things inside, and made a makeshift bundle. After doing all that, she went to the old kitchen, kicked open the broken refrigerator door, took out milk and bread, and stuffed them haphazardly into her mouth. Packing up all the remaining food, Yelena stepped out of the ruins without looking back, heading towards a new life. Damn pirates! Colonel Lind sat up abruptly from his hospital bed. He instinctively reached for his waist, where he found layers of bandages, but did not touch his sword. He turned to look out the window and saw that the sky had darkened. Only then did he realize that the battle had ended before he fainted. Dad, you're finally awake. Eve presented the colonel with the water she had prepared in advance. Upon seeing that the person guarding his bedside was his own daughter, Colonel Lind's murderous aura instantly dissipated, and his rugged features gradually softened. Were you scared? Today is his daughter's first time on the battlefield. Although she is only a medic, he is still worried that she will be frightened by the bloody scenes. Eve waved her hand dismissively. Don't underestimate me. She was just about to show off to her father when Yelena's image suddenly appeared in her mind, and she changed her mind immediately. By the way, I helped a little black-haired girl with a greatsword bandage her wound today, and she said she knew you. The colonel paused in his drinking motion. Acquaintance. A little black-haired girl wielding a greatsword. He thought of the swordswoman who fought alongside him. I think her name was Yelena. Wasn't she the one with black hair? The colonel hurriedly asked, where is he? They should be in the plaza at the dock right now. The colonel gulped down the water in his cup, jumped off the bed, grabbed his cloak from the hanger, and headed out of the medical bay, saying as he went, find her quickly. She's a heroine in eliminating the pirates. He wanted someone to join the Navy, and he absolutely couldn't neglect them. The colonel regretted it. He should have made the arrangements before he lost consciousness. It was all those damned pirates' fault. Hey, Dad, your injury hasn't healed yet. Eve hurriedly followed. A question arose in her mind, a great contributor. That cute girl who calls herself Sister. Is it that amazing? Colonel Lind came to the deck, waved to several of his men, and whispered a few instructions. The men received orders and dispersed to enter the town. Colonel Lind was about to disembark to look for Yelena when a Marine ran up to him. Colonel, a suspicious person appeared at the dock square around noon and hasn't left yet. Lead the way quickly. In a corner of the square, Yelena is practicing her swordplay. 28, 29, 30. Navy personnel would occasionally pretend to pass by, but in reality, it was for surveillance purposes. Yelena understood their thoughts and wasn't angry. She even treated these people as bodyguards to prevent herself from being disturbed by others. She practiced her sword while thinking about things. As their strength increased, their appetite also grew. The food in their backpacks was almost gone, and if they couldn't board the warship tonight, they would have to spend money to buy dinner. The 9 million berries hadn't arrived yet, and she didn't have much money in her pocket. I wonder if the medic sister helped pass on a message to Colonel Lind. Fortunately, fate was kind to Yelena's wallet. After a set of sword-swinging exercises was completed, Colonel Lind's tall figure came into view, followed by his deep voice. As expected of the strongman who defeated Raymond Thorne, even though his injuries haven't fully healed, he still doesn't forget to train. Such diligence is truly admirable. Little sister, you're amazing. Eve's eyes were also filled with amazement. Her father had recounted the whole story of what had happened along the way, and she felt both love and respect for the girl in front of her. She was amazed to discover that her father possessed strength comparable to her at such a young age. Finally come. Yelena didn't even blink at the praise from the father and daughter. Even if you praise me to the skies, I will never join the Navy. Also, the promised bounty of 1 berries cannot be reduced. The group didn't chat for long. Colonel Lind politely invited Yelena onto the warship, arranging for her to have the highest level of accommodation and meals. As night fell, the naval personnel sent out by Colonel Lind returned one after another. Yelena, 14 years old, both parents are musicians. 15 years ago, my parents moved from the kingdom of Lubnis to the island of Svalo. My father was a regular at the pub, and the bartender's words matched the information provided by the neighbors. Okay, I understand. Thank you for your hard work. After his men left, Colonel Lind stroked his beard and fell into deep thought. From the kingdom of Lubnis, her musician was probably another identity of her father, who was actually a retired court swordsman, which explains her superb swordsmanship. My father died at the hands of pirates, and my mother died of illness. Oh, poor child. Colonel Lind compared the intelligence gathered by his subordinates with Yelena's words, and his mind automatically filled in the rest of the details. He no longer had any doubts about her. Return to base. As Colonel Lind's orders were relayed, all the Marines returned to their posts, and the warships set sail along the coastline toward the naval branch on the other side of the island. Swallow Island is not very large, and barring any unforeseen circumstances, the Marines will be able to return to their barracks and get a good night's sleep in no time. In the ship's mess hall, Yelena's table was covered with plates containing a full range of meats, vegetables, and fruits. I could only prepare this much in this rush. Once we get back to the branch, I'll treat you to dinner at a restaurant in town. Eve looked tenderly at the girl who was enjoying her meal, picked up a drink, and handed it to her in case she choked on it, because she was eating too fast. My father said that we should do everything we can to win over this strong man, and it would be best to get him to join the Navy directly. She's not good at ingratiating herself with people, but she can genuinely show kindness. I heard from my father that you are only 14 years old. It's truly enviable that you possess such great strength at such a young age. I'm 8 years older than you, yet I can't even defeat ordinary pirates. Don't say that, sister. You're the healer. Cough, cough, you're the medic. We just have different roles. Drop, drop, drop. The two were chatting when a piercing horn suddenly blared from the restaurant's loudspeakers. Eve suddenly stood up, causing the chair behind her to fall to the ground, but she didn't have time to care about that at the moment. There's an emergency. Chapter 9, Night Battle. A huge, three-wheeled sailing ship emerged from the darkness beside the warship, with a flag fluttering at the top of its mast. Through the moonlight, one could vaguely see the skull pattern painted on it. As soon as the pirates gathered on the deck, a dazzling light shone down, illuminating the entire ship. The pirate captain showed no signs of nervousness at having his whereabouts exposed. He raised his left shoulder, and the prosthetic arm below his elbow, made of large scissors, gleamed with a chilling light. Men, go after them. Those sailors just went through a fierce battle during the day. They're no match for us now. Our chance to make a name for ourselves has arrived. Awuru. Killer. Colonel Lind put away his binoculars. His face was barely brighter than the surrounding darkness. It's the Scissors Pirates of Scissors Hand, Elout Mead. They actually attacked at this time. The situation was urgent, leaving him no time to consider, and he immediately gave the order. Sound the alarm. Assemble the entire army. Prepare for battle. Artillery crews, don't hold back on ammunition. Fire hard. The artillery captain, who received the order, looked distressed. After a day of depletion, there was little ammunition left in the ammunition room, and with visibility obstructed at night, it was almost impossible to sink the pirate ship before it got close. As Yelena walked out of the restaurant, she was greeted by the busy and exhausted figures of the combat team. Miss Yelena, we need your help. Upon seeing the arrival of reinforcements, Colonel Lind's eyes lit up. His injuries were too severe, making it difficult for him to exert his full strength in the upcoming battles. At this moment, he needed a strong leader who could stabilize the morale of the troops. Yelena chuckled dryly, her face showing no excitement at being entrusted with such an important task, only a feeling of utter misfortune. She's only just boarded the warship. She hasn't even finished her dinner. I was attacked by pirates twice in one day. My luck was absolutely terrible. However, she also knew that now was not the time to complain. She had already boarded the pirate ship, and it was unlikely that she could get off now. Get me two now, 3 one-handed swords, and 2 pistols too. The Navy needed her help, and Yelena made her request without any hesitation. The greatsword she wields is tough, sharp, and stylish, but it's too heavy. For her now, it's fine to wield and play around with, but it's not suitable for high-intensity combat. Okay, thank you. Colonel Lind didn't delay, and immediately ordered his men to bring over what Yelena wanted. Bangs bang. Flames kept appearing on the sea surface, and bullets and shells flew everywhere. Bathed in the interplay of moonlight and lamplight, Yelena hid behind the bulkhead, not daring to show her face. Her marksmanship was terrible, and not wanting to waste bullets, she could only hide here to conserve her energy and prepare for the upcoming boarding action. Fire! With the hoarse voice of the artillery captain, the last shell successfully hit the target, and flames shot into the sky. But before a smile could even appear on his face, the pirate ship suddenly accelerated and rammed into the warship. Bang! The scissor-shaped bow pierced through the warship's bulwark, tightly joining the two ships together. Destroy the pirates. Take down these marines. Two groups of people who were like oil and water clashed, and the smell of blood filled the sea. The leader of the pirates was a tall, thin young man with messy hair. As soon as he stepped onto the deck of the warship, he set his sights on Colonel Lind. Killing you will definitely increase the bounty. Then let's see if that bastard, Iron Axe, will still dare to look down on me. Yelena had just killed a pirate who was excitedly charging towards her when she heard this man's words, and her expression immediately turned speechless. These days, pirates' pursuits are really simple and clear. They're even willing to risk their lives to increase their infamy. Yelena thought that the pirates were gambling with their lives by attacking the warship, but the pirates felt that they had gotten a great deal. Is this all the strength a dignified naval captain has? Surrender already, and I'll make your death easier. Elot Mead's scissors swung faster and faster, almost leaving afterimages, forcing Colonel Lind into a retreat. This scene looks so familiar. Why do you always seem to be getting the short end of the stick, Colonel? Could it be that military ranks were bought with money? If Colonel Lind could hear the thoughts of those around him, especially Yelena's, he would surely have burst into a tirade. Don't look down on people. Without these injuries, would I be unable to defeat him? At the very least, it should end in a draw. No matter how frustrated the colonel felt, he had no choice but to take on the heavy responsibility of holding off the pirate captain and preventing this dangerous individual from attacking his subordinates. Laugh. Yelena pulled her longsword from the pirate's heart and then stabbed him in the neck to ensure he was completely out of the running. In just one day, her methods of killing became increasingly sophisticated. However, Yelena didn't have time to dwell on it, as the next enemy was already upon her. Clang! The sword strike failed to injure the target as expected. Instead, it was blocked by the opponent. Feeling the recoil from the sword, Yelena's expression changed slightly. This guy was quite strong. Heh, you killed so many brothers. Don't think I'll let you off easily. The bald, burly man raised an iron bar and smashed it down on Yelena's head. Die. The blow was powerful and heavy. Yelena dared not confront the enemy head-on. She quickly dodged to the side and swung her sword at the enemy's calf. Bang! The iron bar left a hole in the warship's deck, while the chipped blade got stuck hard in the strong man's leg bone. Ah! The burly man lost his balance and fell to his knees on one knee. Yelena shook her head slightly. She wasn't strong enough. Otherwise, she could have cut off one of the opponent's legs with this sword strike. Ignoring the pain in his leg, the burly man picked up the iron bar and tried to continue his attack, but Yelena gave him no chance. She drew another sword from her waist and pierced his neck from the side. Twist your wrist hard. The iron bar fell from the burly man's hand, and he clutched his neck, his eyes wide with disbelief as he slammed it onto the deck. Didn't the boss say he was here to get a bargain? How did this happen? First mate. The younger brother's exclamation pulled Elot Mead back from his extreme excitement. He swept his opponent away with a scissor, turned around, and found his second-in-command lying in a pool of blood, his eyes wide open. His first reaction was not to grieve for his men, but other thoughts popped into his head. Besides Colonel Lind, were there other strong men in the Navy? This contradicts the intelligence we received earlier. His gaze swept quickly around the burly man, finally settling on the nearest female swordsman. It was her. Just this one petite girl. He wasn't even as tall as the first mate's chest. He watched as the girl left her spot and plunged into the pirate group. The sharp blade, gleaming coldly in the moonlight, sent up a cloud of blood mist with every swing, and in the blink of an eye, several more of his men were lost. Med's pupils suddenly contracted. Where did this person come from? Just as he was about to go and meet the other party, he suddenly heard a noise behind him. Med swung his hand back, and the sharp scissors cut through Colonel Lind's bandages, leaving a bloody gash on his waist and abdomen. Damn it, I miscalculated. Looks like I need to kill you as soon as possible, and then slaughter that guy. Chapter 10, Huge Loss. Yelena pulled the sword from the corpse. Before she could wipe the blood off, she suddenly felt the hairs on her back stand on end. Forgetting all about her appearance, she immediately lunged onto the deck. Boom, boom. 2 bullets flew over her head. One shot flew through the crowd toward the sea, while another precisely struck the back of the head of a pirate who was engaged in fierce combat with the navy, splitting his skull open on the spot. Yelena rolled on the spot, and out of the corner of her eye, she spotted the source of the bullet. The two dark gun barrels were constantly adjusting their positions in response to her movements. It turns out that some pirates, seeing how many people she had killed, became afraid and were willing to accidentally injure their own comrades in order to kill her. Yelena cursed under her breath, grabbed a nearby pirate corpse to shield herself, and charged towards the two gun-wielding pirates. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. By the time the pirates pulled back the bolt, their dead comrade was already right in front of them. Boom, boom. The rapid gunfire masked the sound of blades piercing flesh. As Yelena tossed aside the mangled corpses, her sword slashed open the pirates' necks. Yelena's heart was pounding. She almost crashed this time. It seems that not only strength, but also speed improvement is urgently needed. I'll only feel safe when I can dodge bullets head-on. Madam, we can handle the other pirates. Please lend Colonel Lind a hand. With Yelena's assistance, the pressure on the Navy was greatly reduced. Seeing that their side was gradually gaining the upper hand, the colonel's adjutant turned his attention to the leaders of both sides. This sight almost gave him a heart attack. Colonel Lind was cornered by the pirates against the railing, his bandages soaked in blood, and he was about to sacrifice himself for justice. The adjutant had no choice but to seek help from outside. Yelena did not refuse. She would have to rely on Colonel Lind for care for some time to come, and she couldn't let anyone die under her nose. Go to hell. Go to hell. Hattie-hattie. Elot Mead grinned maliciously, splitting the scissors on her arm as wide as possible, aiming to sever Colonel Lind's neck. With this hit, he would once again be able to enjoy the magnificent sight of blood gushing out like a fountain. Thinking of this, Med's smile became even more distorted. Colonel Lind tried to dodge, but his old and new wounds became an obstacle, especially his legs, which he could no longer move. He could only close his eyes in despair. Has my sense of justice come to an end? At the critical moment, a long sword thrust out from the side, accurately hitting Med's elbow and deflecting his fatal blow. Colonel Lind was awakened by the screeching sound of metal scraping. He opened his eyes and found that the deadly scissors had not severed his neck, but were instead stuck in the railing next to him. Nowhere to be found. Within seconds, Colonel Lind's emotions fluctuated faster than a roller coaster. Already injured, he could no longer support his heavy body and fell forward. Interrupted from his attack, Med turned to look to his left, but before he could see what the person who ambushed him looked like, he was confronted by a dark hole. It's a pistol. Med's eyelids twitched violently, and she instinctively tilted her head to one side. Boom! The bullet grazed his ear, leaving a bloody mark. Holy crap, is this a live-action bullet-dodging game? A look of surprise flashed across Yelena's face. She quickly pulled out another gun and pulled the trigger with both hands at the same time. Med's pupils constricted. Again. His head blurred as he narrowly avoided two bullets. Yelena felt a surge of admiration. This guy reacted faster than me. My neck is also in good shape. But who says bullets can only hit the head? She subtly adjusted the muzzle of her gun, aiming it at the enemy's chest and abdomen. Med dodges to the side, but no matter how hard he tries, his body doesn't move an inch. Looking down, he saw that Colonel Lind, who had fallen into a coma, was lying right in front of him, with his two thick arms tightly gripping his ankles. His prized speed was completely rendered useless, and cold sweat uncontrollably seeped from Med's forehead. At that moment, only one thought occupied his mind. If I surrender now, will I survive? Unfortunately, he didn't have time to voice his thoughts. Bang, bang, bang. Yelena pulled the trigger without hesitation until all the bullets were emptied before lowering her gun and approaching the enemy. They're still alive. The people here are incredibly resilient. Med's chest and abdomen were riddled with bloody holes, at least 7 or 8 if you counted them, but he still had the strength to glare at people. His blood-red eyes were fixed on Yelena's face, as if he wanted to carve a hole in it too. Yelena drew her last sword, completely unfazed by the enemy's glare, and resolutely plunged the tip of the sword into his chest. As his consciousness faded, the anger in Med's eyes was replaced by regret. He had come here to take advantage of someone else's good fortune, but he never expected to become someone else's beneficiary. Pirates, look here. This shout attracted the attention of everyone present. The Marines and pirates who were fighting stopped in unison and looked over. In front of everyone, Yelena pulled the longsword from Med's body, reached into her pocket with her other hand, and took out the wanted poster. Under the dim light of the warship, she slowly wiped the blood off the blade with a piece of paper. After wiping away the blood, Yelena held up the red-stained bounty poster, a cruel smile curving her lips, as if admiring a highly prized trophy. The pirates were so frightened by this bizarre scene that they dared not move. They felt that their lives were miserable. Not only had their captain and first mate been killed, but now they were being threatened by a pervert. They should never have become pirates. The Navy personnel dared not utter a sound, exchanging glances among themselves. Is this guy our foreign aid? Did someone from some evil cult infiltrate? Yelena didn't have time to guess what everyone was thinking. She had hoped to use Ilautmead's corpse to intimidate the remaining pirates and end the encounter sooner. Halfway through her boasting, she suddenly remembered that she had already used up her monthly usage of the super bounty order. Even if she obtained the blood of the wanted pirate, she wouldn't be able to acquire his attributes, at least not this month. I was busy all night, and the clothes I just changed are almost stained blood red. In the end, she gained nothing, and all her efforts were in vain. Yelena was so angry she laughed. Now we can only hope that the props don't have time limits or freshness requirements for the blood. If that's the case, she can still use it normally in 7 days, which is the 1st of next month. Otherwise, we'll suffer a huge loss tonight. Most of the pirates were killed or wounded, and the remaining pirates lost the will to resist. They obediently surrendered to the Navy and were locked up in a temporary prison on the bottom deck of the warship. Yelena didn't need to worry about the cleanup. She returned to the VIP cabin that Colonel Lind had specially prepared for her. After she finished showering and changing her clothes, the warship had already arrived at the other end of Svalo Island. The port city where the naval branch is located is situated here. The city was far more prosperous than the small town where Yelena was born. When she stepped off the warship, it was already 10 p.m., but the city was still brightly lit, and the streets and alleys were full of people strolling around. Upon seeing the warships enter the harbor, the people nearby merely glanced at them briefly before turning their attention back to their own business. They have clearly become accustomed to the Navy's frequent voyages and returns. But there are exceptions. They must have just been in a fierce battle. Look, that section of the guardrail has been blown up. I knew I wasn't imagining the gunfire I heard earlier. At the port square, a polar bear dressed in orange pointed at the warships. Chapter 11, It's all Zyraming's fault. Did the bear speak? Yelena rubbed her eyes and realized it wasn't her imagination. The polar bear stood upright like a human, its large, bright eyes lively and alert. When it noticed the Navy watching it, it nervously scratched its head and thrashed its plump body behind its companions. It looks familiar. Oh, it's Beppo. and many more. Bippo, how did he end up here? With him around, doesn't that mean? Yelena looked at the young man who was blocking Bippo's way. Wearing a spotted fur hat and a black and white casual shirt, with a cool expression and a slender figure, Yelena recognized him despite his slight difference from the comic book character and the absence of his signature weapon. Trafalgar Law, the future captain of the Heart Pirates. Yelena carefully reviewed her memories of her past life. Law Bippo, Penguin. No, it's the guy wearing the penguin hat. I think his name is Peggy. I remember now. It was on Swaro Island in the North Blue, the very island we are standing on, that Law gathered his first crewmates and formed the Heart Pirates. What a coincidence. Judging from this guy is practically from the same hometown as me. However, Yelena did not intend to approach Luo to get close to him. Even if Luo had a grudge against the Don Quixote family like she did, it did not mean that the two of them were allies. They could also be enemies. A longing flashed in Yelena's eyes. Perhaps she would make a move against Luo when she became stronger in the future. Who wouldn't be envious of the abilities of the Op-Op fruit? Out of consideration for her fondness for this character in her past life, she wouldn't go too far, at most. But that's a story for later. Right now, Luo isn't carrying a bounty, so she's not her target. Even if she were, she couldn't beat her at the moment. Luo, who was standing some distance away, suddenly felt a chill, and his body shivered violently. Why do I have this feeling that someone is watching me? He cursed inwardly. It must be that bastard Doflamingo. Just you wait. I'll kill you with my own hands one day. It's time to go back, Bippo. The man and the bear quickly disappeared into the crowd. Hey, isn't that Doctor Trafalgar? This is the first time I've seen him outside the hospital. Eve's voice came from behind Yelena, her tone revealing her exhaustion. She and several medics had just finished performing surgery on Colonel Lind. Only after confirming that the colonel was out of danger did she finally relax. Acquaintance. Eve shook her head. I know him, but he probably doesn't remember me. This young man is already the best surgeon on Swallow Island, and his medical skills are far superior to mine. My father once invited him to join the branch army as our medic, but unfortunately he didn't succeed. Yelena felt a rare sense of respect for Colonel Lind. Regardless of his actual abilities, just based on his dedication to recruiting people for the Navy, it would be a waste of his talents to stay in the North Sea branch as a colonel. However, his eye for talent is hard to describe. Putting aside himself, there's no way Law, a troublemaker like him, could join the Navy unless Corazon personally invited him back then. As the naval personnel disembarked, Yelena followed behind them into the branch. Colonel Lind was still unconscious and temporarily acted as the adjutant to the branch leader, personally arranging accommodation for her, the great heroine who had eliminated the pirates. It was a single room in the medic's dormitory. Before he spoke, he had already asked someone to tidy it up. Soldiers are efficient. When Yelena finished her late-night snack and returned to her room with the key, the room was spotless, and the bed was covered with brand-new bedding and sheets. It's getting late. You should get some rest. Call me if you need anything. I live right across the street, but you probably won't be able to reach me tonight. I have something to do later. Eve escorted Yelena to her room, and without lingering, rushed off to the inpatient ward. Colonel Lind was carried into the branch office and was still unconscious. She was going to stay by her father's bedside. Sire, this day has been really long. Yelena put down her sword and bundle, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed onto the bed. Exhausted both physically and mentally, she fell asleep within seconds. In her dream, Yelena punched Kaido, stepped on Blackbeard, and scared a Marine admiral away with just one look. As for Zyraming and his Don Quixote family, Yelena didn't even go out of her way to seek revenge. She simply sneezed while passing through Dressrosa, and the sneezes instantly obliterated all of them. 121, 121. The next day arrived quickly, and Yelena was awakened by the sound of neat slogans. She sat up in bed, rubbing her head, muttering to herself, "What are you doing? We were so close to deciding the outcome with Iam, and you guys interrupted us." Yelena reached out and rubbed her face, trying to bring herself back to reality. No matter how powerful she is in her dreams, it's all fake. Right now, she's just a newbie who hasn't even left the beginner's village yet. Keep it up. Start by building your body. After a quick wash, Yelena changed into clothes that were easy to move in, carried her sword, and went to the branch's training ground. Without much hesitation, she followed the Navy and ran with them. The lieutenant leading the morning exercise team had just experienced yesterday's battle. He wasn't too surprised to see someone with a different style mixed in with the team. He nodded to Yelena and continued shouting slogans. There were also Navy personnel in the group who had never seen Yelena before, but since their superiors didn't call a halt, they dared not fall behind and could only keep their doubts to themselves. On the 400-meter track, Yelena's face gradually turned purple when she reached the 25th lap. Her lungs were in excruciating pain, as if they were about to explode. Even my heart started racing, and the sound even reached my ears. Yelena dared not run anymore, slowed down, and began to walk. She was breathing heavily, her breathing rough and disordered, much like a bellows with a hole in it. Running, how can it be more tiring than killing someone? Whether in her past life or this one, this was Yelena's first time running 10,000 meters, and it was much more difficult than she had imagined. Even though his body had already been enhanced once by the item. However, this strengthened Yelena's resolve to continue training. The enhancements brought by the tools are one aspect, but rigorous training should never be neglected. Even if the growth rate is far slower than the former, it can still ultimately strengthen her abilities. Warm-up complete. Next up are push-ups, 800 per person. No breakfast until you finish. Those sailors who got up even earlier than Yelena had already completed their daily 30-lap basic running training and were now neatly lying on the lawn for the next exercise. Yelena's expression was full of surprise and admiration. If the training of an ordinary naval branch in the North Sea was so intense, how strict must Marineford be? The number of daily training sessions is 2 to 3 times that of the branch, which is within the normal range. She suddenly remembered someone, the future naval hero Kobe. How did he manage to work 200 times harder than the other naval officers? Could there be some kind of magical space, like a time capsule in this world? It's not impossible, after all, since he himself has the mysterious item's super bounty order. It's normal for others to get some cheat codes as well. Once her breathing became even, Yelena stopped her random thoughts and began doing push-ups. 698, 699, 700. While the other naval personnel had finished their training, Yelena was still lying on the lawn, sweating profusely, practicing until her arms trembled, but she didn't stop. This guy's about to take off. His arms are waving like butterfly wings, ha ha ha. Chapter 12, what do you mean? This girl's about to take off. Look at her arms, waving like butterfly wings, ha ha ha. The lifestyle of the naval branch on Swallow Island is relatively monotonous. Apart from training, the naval personnel are either patrolling or chasing pirates, and their daily entertainment activities are scarce. Today, a person not wearing a military uniform came to the playground, which immediately attracted a lot of attention. A significant number of sailors did not rush to the dining hall immediately, but instead stood on the runway to the side, watching Yelena train. Among them were naval personnel who stayed at the branch yesterday and did not participate in the pirate extermination operation. They did not recognize Yelena and couldn't help but laugh when they saw how much effort she was putting into doing hundreds of push-ups. Ha-ha-ha, SHH, SHH. Don't talk nonsense. That esteemed person is not someone we should discuss. However, there were also Navy personnel in the crowd who had participated in the battle yesterday and were lucky enough to escape injury. Upon hearing the laughter, one of them immediately stepped forward and gagged the person. She kills without blinking an eye. You don't know, yesterday. The pirate's first mate stood on the deck, taller than the ship's cabin. He swung his iron rod, leaving after-images, and kept 7 or 8 of us at bay. The pirate was laughing smugly when the official walked over with a displeased expression and casually severed the pirate's thigh with a single sword stroke. Those legs were thicker than my waist. Cutting off the legs wasn't the end of it. A cold glint flashed on the warship, and with a whoosh, a hole the size of a bowl was ripped open in the pirate's neck. You didn't see the gushing blood, Tursk. The naval officer recounted yesterday's battle with exaggerated expressions, emphasizing Yelena's performance. As he got excited, he automatically exaggerated some of the details in his mind. That's amazing. Some people were so excited that they complained about not being assigned to combat units yesterday. Some people expressed doubts. One of those Navy men who loved to mock others was one of them. Are you talking about her? How come such a strong person's physical strength and power are not as good as those of ordinary Navy personnel? Don't be mistaken for someone else because it's dark. When have I ever lied? The boastful Navy man looked indignant, craning his neck so long that his face was almost touching the other man's eyelids. In short, listen to me, don't offend her. Okay. Seeing the other party's firm tone and gaze, the Navy officer, who liked to mock others, gradually lost his doubts, and fear took over. He even had a reason in mind for helping the butterfly flap its wings. He must have been injured in yesterday's battle. That's why he's so weak today. That must be it. What are you talking about? Don't offend anyone. A deep, hoarse voice suddenly came from behind the Navy. Turning around, I saw that the mysterious expert had walked over at some point. Thinking of the opponent's powerful ability to single-handedly kill dozens of pirates, everyone instinctively stood at attention. And nothing, we were just chatting. Sir, is there anything we can do for you? The first to speak was the Navy officer who had initially mocked him, but now his face showed no trace of frivolity, and his gaze was as firm as if he were receiving a medal at the Navy headquarters. Oh, then you two, continue your conversation. I came over to ask where the restaurant is. It's over there, just go straight for 200 meters and turn. Dozens of arms pointed to the same spot in unison. Thank you. Yelena, who was treated with great respect, looked somewhat flustered. She jogged away from the playground and headed towards the cafeteria. Call. The Navy members in the branch were so enthusiastic that she got nervous. Yelena had just run to the restaurant entrance when she ran into her adjutant coming out. You've arrived. I've already made arrangements with logistics. The food in the restaurant will be unlimited for you. However, any other specific treatment will have to wait until the colonel wakes up to discuss it with you in person. The adjutant was respectful. He knew that the girl in front of him was an outside helper invited by Colonel Lind, so he dared not neglect her and personally arranged everything related to her. You're being too enthusiastic. Just treat me like an ordinary soldier. Yelena patted the adjutant on the shoulder and walked past him into the restaurant. The adjutant shook his head helplessly, thinking to himself, ordinary soldiers don't have your strength, and they certainly don't treat their superiors as casually as you do. 20 eggs and 3 bottles of milk, thank you. Having just finished training, Yelena was physically and mentally exhausted and didn't have much of an appetite, so she could only grab something to eat first. She carried her tray to a table by the window, sat down, and ate while thinking about her future plans. The item can only be used once a month, and going out to hunt pirates in the short term won't be of much help to her. Next, she